this theme that is one of my favorites, and you are going to see why. I want to connect the values, the iconography, the myths, the legends, the history of the pre-Hispanic world with the beginning of the 20th century, when the movement of the muralism started. We are now in the 21st century, and probably we are seeing not so far the 20th century, but my intention is to see that all the elements that we're able to appreciate thanks to the murals that we're going to see are coming centuries back from the pre-Hispanic world. So I would like if you can raise your hand, those who love the archaeology. Yes! And now raise your hand if you like the contemporary art. Yes! Now, the purpose of this talk is to build a bridge of comprehension and understanding between these centuries, more or less, more than 5, 6, 7, even 10 centuries in the timeline. No? So how we're going to do that? I prepared this following two concepts. For one side, learn who are these artists. Most of them are very famous, and probably you have heard their names more than once. And for the other side, I chose certain elements that are related even with the mythology or with the architecture of pre-Hispanic times. No matter which is the culture, I am going to mention to several different cultures in pre-Hispanic times, but then I am going to connect all these elements with the murals that we are going to talk about it. So please raise your hand, which is the most famous name of an artist that you know about Mexico. I am going to pick one person. I don't know all your names, but probably Doris is not going to be used. Okay, yes, right, you. Please stand up and tell me the name of the, you. Yes. What's the name of the artist, the most famous artist that you know? Diego Rivera. Okay, thank you. So we are in the same channel. That's why most of us, we are following the footsteps of Diego Rivera. I decided to go into a different direction. During half of the talk, I am going to talk about different other artists, but as Diego Rivera was one of the most relevant and prominent and prolific artists, I'm going to talk about him. So, let's start. Are you ready for this?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I know that, don't read it. It's not necessary to read it. The purpose for me is to have a certain guidance. Okay, in the pre-Hispanic world, we're going to follow 4 rules for the art. And these 4 rules are going to be relevant because are going to be, in a certain way, the inspiration and the motivation for the artists in the 20th century to copy some of these concepts, but in a different context. What does it mean that? That this movement of the muralist movement is going to start after the Mexican Revolution. When is that? In 1921. Imagine that you have 11 years of this movement, no? That it was the war, no? The people wanted to have a real change, and then you have like a new birth, and it's 1921. And the people who is in charge of the country decided to hire the best artists to build an identity. Because after a revolution, really, the people was a little bit lost about the values, about the identity, and about the sense of belonging. So they need to create these symbols that they need to connect in order to have the identity of that modern Mexico. So this is a very important turning point in our history. It's not only in political terms, but economical terms and they need to use all these elements thanks to the art and the murals to support the idea of the identity, how to create the identity after the Mexican Revolution. So let's go 500 centuries back in time and define what we're going to call the pre-Hispanic art. We're going to follow these 4 rules. One is the rhythm with the certain repetition of the motifs. For example, we have a serpent. Here we have a serpent. This is from Teotihuacan. And normally, on the mural in Teotihuacan, we're going to have another serpent, and so on. It's a repetitive motif that is telling to us something. The meaning we're going to decipher later, but now let's go with the concepts talking about the art. Then we're going to have the styling. In this case, I like to make a comparison with what does it mean, for example, in the Japanese culture, a kanji. You have a hieroglyph, and this hieroglyph has involved a complex idea behind the symbol. Well, it's the same in the pre-Hispanic Mexico. We are going to have symbols that are going to have a deep meaning behind this representation. This is related with a very powerful idea. In pre-Hispanic Mexico, the most important writing system is going to be the pictographic system. It's not like us that we have an alphabet. In those terms, the images through the murals or the codices are going to be the most important way to communicate an idea. And this is going to be thanks to the pictograms. A pictogram is an image that everyone can read it at the same way, because there is a common assumption about what does it mean. That's the purpose of that. In this case, this is not only a serpent, it's the federal serpent that has certain characteristics. It is a divinity and is related with the eternal cycle, the femininity, the water, and the feminine way of the world, no? So that will be more or less the complex idea that is behind one image, no? And then we have the decorative or the importance of the ornamentation. I like to say that this concept, it is related with the idea about, in our Western point of view, about what does it mean the Baroque. What does it mean the Baroque? The Baroque means ornamentation, and is the idea of not to have empty spaces. It's totally the opposite that we call today new age. How do you? Minimalism, exactly. So in pre-Hispanic work, it was a similar idea. They wanted to have this ornamentation and to have ideas and more motifs and repetitions over and over and over in order to avoid the empty spaces. So if we want to use this concept in pre-Hispanic work, we will say that they were in a certain way Baroque. No, you can see this is not a correct explanation, but it's a comparison that can help us in order to understand how was the pre-Hispanic art. No. Then we have the symbolism. This is very important because behind every single image, motif, there is going to be a meaning. It's going to be meaningful. So we have these 4 elements that are going to be crucial in order to understand the relevance, the importance of the pre-Hispanic art. The muralists and the artists at the beginning of the 20th century, they knew about the importance of these elements, and they used those in order to recreate and to use them to reinforce certain concepts. Which are going to be these concepts? The identity, to belonging to a new Mexico, and the self-belonging to this idea of nation. I don't want to use the word nationalism because now it's bad understood, but it is related with the sense or the feeling to belonging. So we're going to come back to these ideas over and over as soon as we start to identify the murals, and you are going to be able to see how all these elements are present on the murals of the 20th century. Remember that these concepts belong to the pre-Hispanic world. Sorry. Okay, which are the artists that we're going to follow? We have Juan O'Gorman, he's one of my favorites. Then we're going to have Miguel Covarrubias here. I'm not going to give a whole biography of them because I want to focus on the work, but only to have a list of the names because then we're going to come back to them, no? Then we have Adamo Boari, he was an architect, Italian, and I chose several different names of nationalities that they work in Mexico in order to open the window to different expressions, not only Mexicans, not only foreigners, not only men, or also I chose one woman. There are many more, but according with the theme that we're going to talk about, it is more or less the idea. And of course, Diego Rivera. You will see how we're going to connect all these artists. Then we have Leonora Carrington, here, Jose Chavez Morado, here, Jean Charlotte, he was from Paris. Have you ever heard this name, Jean Charlotte? Because he spent most of his life in Hawaii. And this is quite interesting because most of the public places, buildings, and historical places in Hawaii, they have a part of the murals of Jean Charlotte. He's going to be a very important precursor of the muralism, and I am going to explain later, no? From Paris, and then we have Desiderio Hernandez Xochitl. He was from Tlaxcala, and he's going to be relevant also. So we're going to go back to these names. Now the purpose is only to have an overview in order to continue. So now what I am going to do is to talk a little bit about the elements that are related with archaeology and how these elements were used in several masterpieces that these artists made. Well, here we have Tlaloc. Oh, sorry. I like to talk about Tlaloc because Tlaloc is going to have several different representations. How we're going to identify him? I like to say because of what's the name of this?
Big eyes.
See, like glasses, the circles. Another characteristic is the blue color because it's the rain god, and it's a particular blue color. It's not like navy blue, dark blue. Is a color that is related with the water, the rain god. Then we have these teeth, no? See? Thanks. And then the mustache, something like this, the mustache. So Tlaloc is going to be one of the most important divinities in the pre-Hispanic world because it's related with the water, and the water is everything. And it's an agricultural society that is concerned about the plantations, the crops, and so on. So Tlaloc is going to be all over. If we go to Teotihuacan, for example, this is, sorry, I don't know how to use it. We're going to have these attributes, no? You can recognize Tlaloc because of the eyes, the large mustache, and the teeth, no? So even though we don't have here the color, the characteristic blue color, we can identify that is the rain god, no? What is the name of the rain god? Tlaloc, exactly. And Tlaloc is going to be for the Mexica culture. If we talk about the rain god here in the Mayan area, is going to be Chac, exactly. Oh, you have A+. Well, the importance of this, Nancy, is because now we're going to try to identify these elements on the murals and how these artists use them in order to give us another idea, another point, no? Okay, then we're going to talk about Huitzilopochtli. I know that this is difficult to pronounce, but this is also a very important deity that is related with the hummingbird. The hummingbird is always very fast, and in the pre-Hispanic world is related with the war. And it's relevant to talk about him because also it's going to be used for different artists to reinforce the idea of the rebellion, because this is the war divinity, no? It's related with the war, with the rebellion, and with this idea of resistance. And in a certain way, we're going to have the duality between Huitzilopochtli and La Coyolxauhqui. The Coyolxauhqui is going to be his sister, and in a certain moment, in a myth, they have this encounter, they have a battle, and then Huitzilopochtli is going to be the sun, and the Coyolxauhqui is going to be the moon. It's very important to recognize that related with the cosmovision in the pre-Hispanic world, we are going to have always these dualities. We have a pair of concepts all the time, and this is quite crucial. Okay, now we're going to start. He is Juan O'Gorman. Juan O'Gorman was a very prominent architect, and is going to be related with the history of the muralism in many different senses. Not only because he was great talking about architecture, but also as a muralist. I can imagine that you have been at least once at the international airport in Mexico City, no? How many times? 2, 3 times, 5 times, 20 times? Okay, have you ever seen his mural? No. Well, the next time you are going to pay attention where it is, because it's fabulous. And he painted about several themes, but the idea of this presentation is to focus our attention in those masterpieces that he's showing his expertise in the pre-Hispanic world. So do you recognize this place?
University.
The university. The Autonomous University of Mexico City. That is in the south of Mexico. It's not the Politécnico. This is the public library of the most important university in Mexico City. Okay, this piece is a masterpiece, and we're going to see how. Not only because he used these glasses, natural glasses from all over Mexico, because he thought this is going to be in the surface, no? So we need to have certain materials that is going to last because of the weather conditions. So imagine that you have these characteristics, this size, but the most important part is going to be the motifs, the symbols, and the icons that he's going to use in order to represent the history of Mexico. So we were talking about here the eagle, that you know that is our national symbol. In a moment I am going to show you an archaeological piece that is on the Mexicas Hall at the National Museum of Anthropology that represents the most important myth of the pilgrimage of the Mexica people coming to the center of Mexico. They were looking for the eagle and the cactus eating the serpent. So Juan O'Gorman is using these elements in order to reinforce the identity of Mexico. Then we are going to have another time the eagles. We have this mezcli that is another important divinity related with the dead. And then we have here Huitzilopochtli. Huitzilopochtli, as we said minutes before, it is the divinity related with the war. And the war is relevant because it has also the blue color. And this element is related also, as I explained before, with the sun and the moon. The moon we cannot see it because the photograph is a little bit not in a right position, but also it's reinforcing this idea that I wanted to tell you about the concepts that are coming together in pairs, night and day, illness and health, something like that. Now, in the pre-Hispanic world, they are going to have at least 20 different pairs of concepts that are going to be related with this idea of duality. Indeed, the most important story is coming from the origin of the world, that there are two divinities, Ometeo and Omecihuatl. And the son of these two most important divinities is Huitzilopochtli, this one. So, in real terms, we can see that this building, the public building of the UNAM, is a living codex. Imagine first the idea, how to create, how to reinforce the elements of the pre-Hispanic world in a majestic way, because the size, the materials that he's going to use. So it's, believe me, an incredible way to connect the past with the present. And this is a very important clue for the artist, how to make a timeline that is going to be relevant in terms of history. Because it's not only to create the symbols or to repeat the symbols, it's to be related with the meaning of these symbols. So, as I explained at the beginning, in the pre-Hispanic world, all these pictograms have a meaning, and this meaning can be read. It's not something that I am interpreting, but it's something that it can be read. No, for example, the foundation of Mexico and so on. So, in general terms, we can say that this part of the work of Juan O'Gorman is a living codex. It's wonderful, no? Okay, let's go with the next one. Here we have this stone that is at the entrance of the Mexica Hall. You are coming to the National Museum in the Mexicas and go to the right, and then you are going to find it. No, Nancy? No, I am saying Nancy because I was with her. We saw it together. And no, it's not because she's the smartest, but she was with me. Yes, no, she's incredible, believe me. We have been together in several places, and always she has the right answer. So we have the eagle, the cactus, and the serpent. It's incredible that this is an archaeological piece. It's not something that is coming from 200, 300, no, 600 years ago, and is related with the most important myth of foundation of the Great Tenochtitlan. Okay, here we have another Juan O'Gorman piece, and who is he? Tlaloc, exactly. Tlaloc is the main element in this part of the mural, and he's combining more modern or Western ideas, for example, this like motorcycle, but then we have the serpent. And remember the four concepts that we saw at the beginning, the repetition, the idea of complete the whole space without having empty lines, no? He's using exactly the whole concepts that belongs to the pre-Hispanic aesthetic in this mural, and using as a main element Tlaloc, the rainbow, because it's the most prominent, the most prolific, and the most important one in terms of vitality. I decided to place another parts of this mosaic piece of Juan O'Gorman, because then we have this element that is atl, that is making reference to the cycles. Then we have the jaguar, another important element in the pre-Hispanic world, and another recreations, but as you can see, he's combining elements from the modernity then to the pre-Hispanic past in another interpretation. So this is like the juxtaposition of elements in one place and trying to connect with different times in order to reinforce the identity of the Mexicans, no, and all the people that can admire this piece. Another time we have here Tlaloc. You can identify because of the eyes. As you can see, it's an stylization. But if we have seen that all these elements are pictograms and everyone can read the same thing, everyone that can be in front of his can identify the eyes, the mustache, the teeth, and the blue color, even with this allegory. Okay, have you ever seen these images before? No. So not everything is Diego Rivera. It's a good sign, no? We have much more, and that is the interesting part, to see more options. Okay, now we're changing of artists, and I'm going to explain why. We have Miguel Covarrubias, and probably you have seen some of his paintings at the National Museum of Anthropology or at the Folk Art Museum, because he painted all these maps that are the introduction to the different halls at the different museums, but basically these two museums, because he was very interested to connect the anthropology with the muralism and the movement of the muralism at the beginning of the 20th century. And I think so, he was very interested also in different other cultures. For example, he traveled to Bali, He published a book about the different masks all over the world, different masks. And I think so he's very remarkable. Look how he's placing, for example, the Olmec head in Veracruz with the happy face and the surrounding. It's very, very interesting, the eloquence, how he is not only placing the images by itself, but also the context, the cultural context. And I need to say that most of the artists that are going to be connecting the archaeology, the anthropology, the history with the art were at the beginning artists that were working in an archaeological excavation. No? For example, we have other cases like Tatiana Proskuriakov. She was at the beginning the artist in Copan, and then she was the very first epigraphist that was able to reveal certain of the reading of the Maya writing system. She was not a muralist, but she was an artist, and the entrance to the archaeology that was as an artist. No? So it was more or less the case of Miguel Covarrubias, and I think so his contribution to the understanding of the connection between the anthropology and the art is very important. So my invitation is, as soon as you visit these two museums or any approach to the introduction of the different cultures of Mexico, to see these maps. The maps of Mesoamerica, the maps of Mexico, and then all the other elements that are related with that, the artifacts, the sculptures, and the codices, and so on. Then we have who is this? You, my dear, you. What's your name? You.
Me?
Yes.
Loco.
Exactly. It's Tlaloc. This is a painting of Miguel Covarrubias. This is the original from Teotihuacan. Remember that Teotihuacan is much more than the Sun Pyramid, the Moon Pyramid, and the Quetzalcoatl structure. These murals, and this specific one, have you ever seen it the last time that you went to Teotihuacan? Yes or no?
Yes.
No. Why not? It's not open to the public? Why not? There is a museum focused only in murals in Teotihuacan. So the next time that you go to Teotihuacan, the name of this museum is Beatriz Lafuente. She was an historian art specialist, and she rescued most of these murals that were in situ. And nowadays you have the two options: go to the different structures and visit them in situ, and a few of them are in this museum that is remarkable. We can distinguish the characteristics of Tlaloc, and I think so what Miguel Covarrubias is very interesting, because sometimes the colors or certain elements are not so evident. For example, here the necklace and the diamonds, or the pieces here. So remember that these drawings were done in the 40s. So now we're in 2022. So it is important to have this material in order to understand and to have a better appreciation and approach to the understanding of the elements that we are seeing. No? So my invitation right now is to go back to Teotihuacan and see the murals. Not only visit the regular areas, but try to go deeper into understanding that the murals were already important since pre-Hispanic times. Most of us will think that the muralism started with Diego Rivera, and that's it. Indeed, Diego Rivera went to Teotihuacan and studied the process, the techniques, the pigments, the glue, and all the fresco techniques that were used since pre-Hispanic times, because he wanted to recreate. He knew. Imagine that this lasts by now. Yes. What happened? Scott? I don't know. I only pushed this button. Well, these murals belongs to the 500 after Christ. So that means that we have at least 1,500 years with these colors, intensity, and so on. So it is very important to see that the murals since pre-Hispanic times were done in a wonderful way, and Diego Rivera knew that. So he used archaeology first to understand thank you very much, Scott, and the processes, the techniques, the elements in order to recreate that grade of expertise. Okay, here we have these beautiful Olmec heads. They are on the Jalapa Museum in Veracruz, and you must know that there are 17 monumental Olmec heads in Mesoamerica, and the most important collection is in this museum in Jalapa. As you can see, Miguel Covarrubias had the opportunity to use the archaeology to reinterpret these elements and produce them in these beautiful maps. Okay. Sí. See, the Olmecs were established in a very interesting area that is called now Tabasco and Veracruz. But then with the time they expand their area of influence even to the area that we call today Guerrero, Morelos, and Tlaxcala, for example. Because they have several problems with the natural conditions as today. Tabasco is not a good place to live, sorry if I am. But the archaeology is telling us a very important lesson. You need to have an encounter with the ecological environment to hear about what is going to be in the next few years, and that's why they noticed that were not any longer sustainable and they needed to go to another areas. That's why we are going to have to call this Pan-Olmec area, including the state of Guerrero, Morelos, and Tlaxcala. Okay, now we are at the Fine Arts Palace, sorry. Oh, sorry. And here we have you ever seen this? Have you ever been at the Fine Arts Palace in Mexico City? Probably you went to the ballet, or you saw the murals, but now see the architecture of the place is remarkable. Remember that we said the name of the architect, Adamo Boari, he was from Italy. This project was a very important one at the beginning of the 20th century, and he is going to be interested also to reinforce the identity of Mexico through these elements. I believe you have ever been in Cabá, no? Here in Yucatan, Cabá. Cabá. Okay, this is chalk. It is the rainbow, and as you can see here is chalk, but with a different material. What is the name of this material? Eh? No, it's not marble. It's tin, no? Tin? Oh, kind of. Probably is not the right word. It's latón. But as you can see, the nose, the glasses, and all the characteristics related with chalk, exactly. You say the right word, Annie, because we are in the Mayan area, and it's the equivalence of the rain god. Another time, the rain god is a main element into the reinterpretation of this nationalism. Okay? Another time, this is from Teotihuacan, from the Quetzalcoatl feather serpent in Teotihuacan, and this is the Fine Arts Palace. Look, the eyes, the mustache, no? All the characteristics, even we can say that it's identical. How many years of difference between these two pieces? 1,000 years. Why Adamo Boari is choosing these elements? The other one was chalk. This one is Tlaloc. It's the same god, but different, how do you say, adscriptions, like representations, because one is the Mayan culture, the other is the Mexica culture. And also different chronologies, both the same in the subtle way is the same god. Don't be confused, but only a little bit. I like to confuse only a little bit, not too much. Okay, so the Fine Arts Palace and Teotihuacan, incredible, no? Very special. Okay, let's see another example. Okay, have you ever seen these pictures? No. Why not? Because this is not a place that we can visit as a regular person. This is the military school. And the architect, Agustin Hernandez Navarro, decided to use the same iconography of Tlaloc to build the school. Incredible. You are going to say, Marina, it's horrible. Well, but the important thing of the architect in this case is to reinforce the identity and the connection with the pre-Hispanic cosmovision and connect in a very important way with the sense of identity, even for the students. Imagine that you are going to has certain connection, no? This was very revolutionary in the sense of the architecture's school, but I think so is working for the political propaganda, no, in a certain way. So you can see how the archaeology and how the concepts that are coming from 500, even 1,000 years back, are using in the 20th century to reinforce another elements, the identities, self or belonging, and these expressions. Well, we cannot be agreed, but they are working in a certain way, no? If you are taking the highway from Cuernavaca to Mexico City, the military school is on the right side. Sometimes it's possible, according with the conditions, meteorological conditions, to appreciate where is the military campus. You are not going to be able to distinguish this from the highway, but you can recognize where is the military school. Probably in the near future, as today, that we can go to the Los Pinos. Who knows? Who knows? Probably they are going to open this area to the public. Who knows? Let's cross the fingers. I want to see that. Okay. Then we have here the Anahuacalli Museum. The Anahuacalli Museum is where Diego Rivera holds his most important archaeological collection, and this is Uxmal. Have you ever been at the Anahuacalli Museum? Okay. This is very important because Diego Rivera was not only concerned about the pieces, he was concerned about how to present the pieces in a very eloquent way. So at the entrance of the Anahuacalli Museum, there is a ball court, which is a very interesting way to give it the entrance to the visitors. And then all the architecture is phenomenal. And at the entrance, in order to give it the welcome to the visitor, you have these stairs. Oh my goodness, those stairs are incredible. And the materials. And this is the question. You know who was the architect of the Anahuacalli Museum? You may hear. He was the owner, the designer in a certain way, but the architect, Juan O'Gorman, exactly. Juan O'Gorman and Diego Rivera were very close friends. They were so close that the studios that are in San Angel, there are 3 studios. Diego's, Frida's, and Juan O'Gorman studio. They were the 3 very close friends. And Juan O'Gorman was very polyphacetic, prolific, and also he was an entrepreneur, no? He wanted to make the big things. And you know who was the museographer of the Anahuacalli? A very important poet. And, no? Any idea? It is connected with the Olmec culture. He was Carlos Pellicer. Carlos Pellicer was a very important poet, and he lived in Tabasco. He was from Tabasco, and he was very concerned about the monumental Olmec heads, and he designed a park to hold these Olmec heads. And also he was very interested about the archaeology and the museography. And Diego Rivera invited him to do the work here at the Anahuacalli Museum. You can see the connection. Who is this? Which is this place? Jay? Uxmal. So we have at this point 2 references to the Yucatan area, but we have many more. It is quite interesting that it's not only the murals, but also the architecture. The architecture, the murals, the museography, the artifacts, and so on. No? It could be in a public place, or it could be a private collection. Okay? These are the ceilings of the Anahuacalli Museum. That you can see is the feathered serpent. This is a leitmotif into the iconography of the pre-Hispanic world that is related with the water, the femininity, and the productivity and the feminine side, no? The serpent is all over Mexico. And it's going to have a totally different explanation and approach of the serpent in the Catholic world, no? Here in the Hispanic Mexico has a good reputation. I am not saying to have a serpent in your house, but you can be friendly with them, no? Because they are able to connect in different spaces, the water and the earth, and they are changing the skin, and this symbolizes the new cycle. And in the pre-Hispanic world, the cycles are relevant in terms of new beginning, no? And the calendar, of course. Okay. You know who is the artist of this? Intentionally, I didn't write the name because I want to prove your interest about this artist. So, raise your hand if you know who is the artist who painted this at the San Ildefonso College in Mexico City. Annie, you have the answer. Is Diego Rivera or is not Diego Rivera? Okay, which will be the things that are not connecting with Diego Rivera? Okay, the blonde hair here, the angels, and probably the Renaissance influence. And Annie, you are right.
Oh.
That was Diego Rivera. This was the very first mural he painted at the San Ildefonso College in 1921. And the reason because I am showing to you is because I wanted to say that the muralism movement was not as we can see it today from the beginning. Diego Rivera spent more than 11 years in Europe, basically in Italy and Spain, and the Renaissance was a great influence for him. When he was hired by José Vasconcelos, and he was the Prime Minister of Education in 1921, he said to Diego, please paint this mural, whatever, and he painted this. Then, when José Vasconcelos said, well, what does it mean this, my dear, with Navioli, the most important model at that time, that was the girlfriend of Gerardo Murillo, one of the most important artists at that point, and teacher of Diego Rivera. And what is this, Diego? What is related this with Mexico? Please tell me. And Diego Rivera said, sorry, I don't know what does it mean Mexico. So José Vasconcelos said, you must travel. And you need to travel today because you don't have any idea how to express the values after the Mexican Revolution. These values are the identity, self-belonging, and are connected with the past. So he decided to travel. That was his first trip in Mexico, and he decided to go to the Isthmus of Tehuantepec, to Oaxaca. That's why Frida and Diego were so connected, because this area of interest with the Tehuana dress, the power of these women, and the exoticism related with the Isthmus of Tehuantepec. Now we're going to see the change. So that's why it's so relevant to travel. Not only to paint better, but to know how is Mexico indeed, because probably we have an idea, a romanticism about Mexico. Okay, Mexico is like this, or this is what does it mean Maya, or whatever. But in real terms, even for Diego Rivera, he was in a very bad situation, no? Painting the angels to reinforce the Mexican identity after the Mexican Revolution. Then, we're going to have this. These murals are the Secretary of Public Education in Mexico City.
She asked me to tell you something 45.
Ah, don't tell me that.
Oh.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Okay, this is Ochipili. Diego Rivera took this image of one of the most important sculptures that are related with the poetry in the pre-Hispanic world. I am going to show you which is the original. It's beautiful. It's the Prince of the Flowers, because it has more than 4 different flowers, the tobacco leaf, the ololiuki, and the peyote. Don't ask me why. No, ask me why. Because it is related with the literature, the arts, the music, and so on. So I think so remarkable how finally Diego was connecting in a certain way with the roots of the pre-Hispanic Mexico, and he showed it beautifully in this part of the mural at the Secretary of Public Education. Okay, then we have another elements. This is the National Palace. We can see a big jump, how to recreate the second welcome to the Quetzalcoatl. That is going to be one of the most important divinities in the pre-Hispanic world. Here is Quetzalcoatl. We have this shell related with the importance of this divinity. Sorry, because Scott told me that we don't have too much time, and I don't know. Well, this is relevant for me because the murals also are going to represent part of the history of Mexico. And remember that at the beginning of the 20th century, most of the people is going to be illiterate. So, Jose Vasconcelos thought the best way to teach the history is through the murals. So they are going to be welcome to visit these public places at the time that they are learning the history. And one of the most important moments of the history in Mexico is Hernán Cortés and the missionaries and the time of the conquest. Here we have how we used to have the idea how looks like Hernán Cortés, and this is look how Diego Rivera painted. I love it because they don't have any similarity. With this you can see that the muralism is also a tool. It's a political tool where the artists can recreate in their own favor and use the history in their own terms. And this is very important because we're going to see another example later. But at the first time he painted Hernán Cortés like this, that is very handsome. Remember that he came at the age of 33 years old. And the way that he painted later, he was 66 and he was sick and he had syphilis. Remember that he died because of the syphilis. And this is a very interesting thing how Diego Rivera is using these elements in order to portray Hernán Cortés. Of course, he was not happy with Hernán Cortés. At the beginning, he didn't want to make any statement about this position, but later he felt more comfortable and said, you know, it's time to recreate this part of the history. And also it's relevant because you can see here the first mestizo. The mestizo is the first children that was born between a Spanish and an indigenous lady. I like very much this opportunity, how the muralism is telling us a recreation about a very important concept, how to understand the history, and how we have so many different stories about the same fact. And this is happening all the time. So we need to be open to discuss and to have different approaches and not to read only one single statement and say, okay, let's have it and let's go to the next. No, we need to go deeper and have different approaches and then have a better understanding of the same fact. Look, can you believe it, Hernán Cortés at the age of 33 years coming to Mexico? Of course not. And in a certain way, Diego Rivera is very clever because he wants to make this a statement. I am not happy with him. I am not leading this thing with this intention. So I am going to place my own version about who was Hernán Cortés. Okay, then this is a part of a codice. You have here Tlazolteotl is the name of the divinity, is giving birth, is related with the femininity and so on. And this is one of the murals that is at the Secretaría de Salud in Mexico City. It's a kind of offices for the people who are related with the hospitals and so on. As you can see, Diego Rivera is using even the same colors. The same colors. And now they have the history of the medicine, even here with the doctors, the chiropractors, and so on. And some of the ideas that we have been discussing, for example, the dichotomy between the two concepts, the sun and the moon, the trees, the ceiba trees, and so on. So it's interesting how Diego Rivera was especially connected with the history of the archaeology and different resources related with this story, no? Have you ever seen this before? No? Well, this is your first time. Okay, then we have this painting of Leonora Carrington, and I think it's going to be my last one. because I think so we don't have time for the questions. This is at the National Museum of Anthropology. I really like it because he was really deep in the understanding of the Tzotziles work, that this is in Chiapas, the ceiba tree. Then we have the trees and the cemetery. We have the Church of Chamula. If you have ever been in San Juan Chamula, you can recognize these elements. And then all the allegories that are related with Leonora Carrington style. So this is a perfect match between some of the allegories of what does it mean, the Tzotziles work, and then the interest of Leonora Carrington to portray this as a magical place to live. Well, here we have the Coatlicue, and this artist, Jose Chavez, is using half and a half. Coatlicue is the lady of the skirt of serpents, that also is related with the femininity. And this is quite interesting because he's using another national elements to reinforce the identity, like the maguey. And this is the rebirth. And I know that we don't have so much time. I want to go to this, because this is going to be all over in our culture, and it's very important to me to tell you what does it mean. This is the Zompantli, this is the Great Temple in Mexico City. This is a wall of skulls and was related with the ball court. And now we're going to have different representations. For example, this artist, that is Carlo Magno, is using the wall of skulls in most of his work with black clay. He's from Coyotepec, Oaxaca. And look, he has a museum, a very interesting museum, sorry. I am going to go back to the other picture later, and has the same wall of skulls. And now, these are used today mostly for the representations of the Day of the Dead. This is a wall of skulls made with different techniques. I took the picture at the Folk Art Museum in Mexico City. Also, it's called with the same word, Zompantli, that is the wall of skulls, but with a different context, now related with the Day of the Dead. I wanted to place this particular example because it's related with the folk art and with one of the most important festivities in Mexico. The thing is that the wall of skulls is not related with the Day of the Dead. They are using part of the archaeology, but misunderstanding a little bit the deep sense and context of this element. But as a way of conclusion, it's late, is that Mexico has centuries of history, 3 millennium of history. And what we can see today in 2022 is only the surface. But in a certain way, every single aspect is related with the past, because the purpose is to reinforce the identity and the sense of belonging to that past. Of course, we're going to have different ways to express these values, but my intention is to see not only, for example, this example of the Zompantli, oh, Day of the Dead. No, try to go deeper. Always your answer is going to be on the archaeology, because even the most remarkable artists in Mexico are going to have their inspiration and their feet into the archaeology, and it's very important to connect with these centuries and have this better of the understanding of the complexity of this wonderful country. Thank you very much for your appreciation, and thank you to ESCOL for organizing this moment. I don't know if you have any question, or do you like to ask something to Scott about the future events in the Merida English Library? Or you want to ask me anything? I am very open to reply to you and to share as much as possible.
Where is that museum that you mentioned, the Diego Rivera was the owner of?
Is the Anahuacalli Museum.